an amiable anteater? That's how I was described at 19 in one of my first reviews as a professional actress. I was in I Can Get It For You Wholesale playing a lovelorn secretary, and I could see the comparison, well, sort of. Over the next year, I was also called, a sour persimmon, a furious hamster, a myopic gazelle, and a seasick ferret. Yikes. Was I really that odd-looking? Only a year later, when I was in my second Broadway show, Funny Girl, my face was exactly the same, but now I was being compared to an ancient oracle, Nefertiti, and a Babylonian queen. I must say I love those descriptions. Apparently, I also had a pharaonic profile and scarab eyes. I think that was supposed to be a compliment, though I have to admit one of those eyes does look, well, a little cross-eyed at times. And it seems like the pharaoh also had a big schnoz. People kept telling me, get it fixed. I bet no one said that to him. Sometimes it felt like my nose got more press than I did. In the cover story in Time magazine, the writer said, "This nose is a shrine." That sounds good. Then he went on, "The face it divides is long and sad, and the look in repose is the essence of hound." Not so good. So which is it? Am I a Babylonian queen or a basset hound? Probably both, depending on the angle. I wish I could say none of this affected me, but it did. Even after all these years, I'm still kind of hurt by the insults and can't quite believe the praise. I guess when you become famous, you become public property. You're an object to be examined, photographed, analyzed, dissected. And half the time I don't recognize the person they portray. I must say, I've never gotten used to it, and I try to avoid reading anything about myself. But sometimes I'll just pick up a magazine in the dentist's office, for example. I happen to like going to the dentist because, well, for two reasons. I love how my teeth feel after they're professionally cleaned, and it's also an hour of peace with no phone calls. Once I was waiting in the waiting room, and I saw a story about Neil Diamond in a magazine, who happened to be a grade ahead of me at Erasmus Hall High School in Brooklyn. Actually, the article was about his brother, who invented some crazy bathtub that had a stereo system and all sorts of electronic gadgets, perfect for getting electrocuted. And it's not cheap. It's $14,000. I'm thinking, who would ever buy such a thing? And then I read that I'm one of his customers. I didn't even know my friend Neil had a brother. Now I'm being used to sell his bathtub? That's irritating. But other stories cut deep. For instance, one night, my dear friend Andrei Barkowiak, a brilliant cinematographer who did 2 films and a documentary with me, came over for dinner. Actually, he was cooking because I'm a hazard in the kitchen. I can burn water. Andrei had been to see his friend earlier, a medical doctor, by the way, and happened to mention that he was having dinner with me. And the doctor said, "I hear she's a bitch." "What?" said Andrei. "What are you talking about?" He said, "She's impossible to work with, I hear." Andrei said, "That's ridiculous. Have you ever worked with her?" "No." "Well, I have 3 times, Andrei said, and she's wonderful to work with. In fact, she's a very, very nice person." He says, "No, she isn't. She's a bitch. I read it in a magazine." That's the power of the printed word. And there was no hope of changing this man's mind. He chose to believe some writer who had never met me rather than the person who really knows me. That upsets me deeply. Why couldn't he accept the truth? For 40 years, publishers have been asking me to write my autobiography, but I kept turning them down because I prefer to live in the present rather than dwell on the past. And the fact is, I'm scared that after 6 decades of people making up stories about me, like the one I just told you, I'm going to tell the truth and nobody's going to believe it.